I was reduced to working with my left hand and to this finger. When I finally started working on the book, I used my index finger and typed everything lowercase. I couldn't reach two keys at the same time to make caps and so on. I eventually, it took me 6 months to clue into the idea that I could use my thumb to the space bar. So I wasn't going from there, from the keys to the space bar. Little things that you don't think about. I mean, we do so many things but automatically, and I was having to learn how to do them again.
Okay. Ron, can I interject for 1 minute now? We need to take a break, and we'll do so. And when we come back, we'll pick up the story right here when you've decided to write your book.
Okay.
All right. So, interviewing Ron Smith, the author of The Defiant Mind, Living Inside a Stroke. Thanks, Ron.
You're watching Coast TV.
Hello. I'm in the studio today interviewing Ron Smith, author of The Defiant Mind, Living Inside a Stroke, published by Ronsdale Press recently. It's a document, a testimony to Ron's experience of having a stroke 4 years ago in the Nanaimo area, and a book that's filled with the incredible insights from that experience, from Ron's perspective, and also some incredible poignant insights that you have for the medical profession. But Ron, before we get to some of those insights, let's go back a minute to where you decided that at some point you wanted to write a book, and you were down to, you had one finger to write this. You were a writer by vocation throughout your life, and you have one finger to write this book, and you described a little bit about that. But I want to know, how important was it to you to have a project like writing a book in your mind as a goal and as a destiny for you?
Yeah, I think before I actually sit down and write the book with the index finger on my left hand, what motivated me was watching other stroke patients, and the desperation that a lot of them felt. I could see that. I felt that same desperation until I decided that that wasn't getting me anywhere. I had to somehow rise out of this morass into which I had fallen, and the darkness and so on. So I stopped taking the pills, and I got the people to get me out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and put me in my wheelchair where I would meditate. And it was while I was doing those things, various other practices and so on, to try and regain something of my old self, that the idea for a book started to germinate, I think. But it was in response to other people. 50% of stroke survivors feel abandoned when they come out of hospital. And I could see that sense of loss happening. And I thought, well, you've been a writer, publisher, teacher all your life. You should perhaps use those skills when you get out to sit down and write a book. But it was just in the initial stages at that point. I was thinking about it. Nothing had formed in my mind. It took much more time for it to finally generate itself.
When you started to write the book, I guess you're still in hospital, and you spoke of, or you wrote about, some incredible aspects of darkness that did seep into your soul, and you had some incredible emotional gyrations, as is the best way I can describe them. And yet, out of that, you did manage to pull yourself through? What were some of the things along the way that, for example, you wrote about a caretaker that came into your hospital room,
yeah.
a cleaner at one point. Little things like that seem to make a huge difference in your daily outlook. And I wonder if you could comment on the things that help to pull you along out of this abyss that you seem to be, pulled into.
Well, I think probably the most important thing for me, and probably for most stroke survivors, is family and friends, and your caregivers. They're critical to the recovery process, to escaping that sense of despair that I think everybody who has a stroke inevitably feels. I still have a bit of a speech impediment, as you can probably hear, but anyway, the cleaner was quite wonderful, because he came onto the ward in the morning, very cheerful and so on, and he responded to all of us in a very personal way. He knew our names, and he always had a little tale to tell. He always asked us questions about ourselves. And that was really important, because it gave you some connection to the world. As I said earlier, you feel disconnected. And so when anybody reinforces that sense that you're still a human being, you feel a sense of excitement. And I got that from my family. I was very fortunate. I saw other patients who weren't getting that kind of reinforcement, and you just slip away. There's nothing you can do about it. You're struggling so much with everything that's going on around you. You have to kind of reconnect. I'll tell you a little story. One of the things that happened to me is they were very slow in getting a speech therapist to me, and a speech therapist is sent all stroke patients to test their swallowing ability. They called her the swallow lady. I imagined a woman covered with feathers, a large figure was going to fly into my room and land on the headboard, speak to me. But she took 4 days to get to me, so I was hungry during that whole time.
Starving is what we call.
Yeah, starving. I might not look like it, but yes, I was extremely hungry. And that spurred on memories from my past of another time in my life when I had gone without food for several weeks. Not totally without food. I had got some water and managed to pick some oranges in the south of Spain and that sort of thing. But I realized then that my memories were a way back to myself. They really helped. So I found little strategies from watching people around me and so on that assisted me, that really helped in my recovery.
Ron, in the time we have left, what I remark on is about your book is the insights you have for the healthcare profession. And I know you've embarked on a bit of a book tour for your book. You're contributing to the Heart and Stroke Foundation and literature. Your book has been very well received by healthcare practitioners and professionals. But one thing that you mentioned in here is that they've got the physiotherapy part down, but you say that no one necessarily was really probing you on your healthcare team to ask you what was really going on inside of you, inside your mental life at that time.
Yeah, that's perhaps the thing that most concerns me about my treatment. To begin with, they want to get you on your feet, and that makes good sense. But that continues to be the one and only therapy for the most part. It's something you can see. You can see some physical recovery. You can't see any intellectual, cognitive, mental recovery. So in my case, 1 in 4 years, I still not seen a neurologist, which concerns me. But 2, in that time, no one ever asked me what was going on inside my brain. And it seems to me absolutely vital that at some point, the people who are doing the physical therapy know what you're feeling inside your body and inside your head and so on. Because the two aren't separate. Our physical beings and our intellectual beings are not two very separate entities. They're obviously tied together.
Yeah.
So if they asked those all-important intellectual questions, I think they could have done better for me physically.
Ronald, a final question to you would be, if you're sitting across from a Minister of Health at this time, provincial or federal, what suggestions would you have to offer?
Well, I think perhaps the first one, there needs to be more funding. It's false economy. It costs Canada around $27 billion a year to care for stroke survivors. If we treated them in those first weeks and continued the therapy beyond the time limits that they've imposed, I think we would have a lot more recovery and save the economy a lot of money.
You know, we've got UBC has a brand new brain center. It seems like we're learning more about the brain all the time, and you think that learning more about stroke, the issue around stroke, is also paramount importance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we understand so little about the brain. Matteo Kaku in his book talks about the fact that there are 2 frontiers. One is the universe, and the other is the brain.
Right.
Our brains are unknown.
Ron, I'll have to cut it short there, but thanks so much for coming into the studio and talking with me about your book, The Defiant Mind, Living Inside a Stroke. Thanks so much, Ron.
It's been my pleasure, Michael.
Okay, man.
Take care.